Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, Principal Atmospheric Scientist at Nutrien Ag Solutions, and I want to thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. Well, these were released middle of the week last week, and I just want to make sure that everybody got a chance to see them. They're the statewide average temperature ranks on the left and the statewide average precipitation ranks on the right. So across the United States, we have, across the whole of the U.S., we have about 125 years of continuous record in terms of weather conditions. And we can see that the state of North Carolina here is sitting at 121 on that 125-year record in terms of temperatures, while sitting right there at 100. So we had a top 25 wettest, and we had a top 5 warmest. And you can see how much cold air was tucked away in the western United States. So it's important to just keep this as a reference, because as we look over the last couple of weeks, so this would be the finish of October and the beginning of November, we know that on October 31st, on Halloween, that's when we got our first major cold air intrusion. And the point behind me showing you this map is just to show you how much cold air has still been kind of tucked away here in the north central part of the United States and the Canadian prairies, because we're going to be unleashing that cold air this week. In terms of precipitation, overall, just looking up for the last couple of weeks, very dry in the western United States. And as you get over into the Carolinas, certainly you can see the enhancement through the mountains there, but some drier swaths as you get, into the Piedmont and eventually over to the Atlantic coastal plain and parts of the Carolinas here, where some locations have been between 40 and 60% of normal. Well, we certainly have a chance of precipitation coming through this week, because over the weekend things were relatively dry. This system here exited toward the end of last week, and then behind that we saw a pretty decent weekend here in terms of precipitation. But all this stuff you see right up here is all sitting on a frontal boundary that's advancing its way toward the south. And early this morning, on Monday morning, we could see the expanse of where that snow is going to be. Well, the front that is draped right in through here will be blasting through the United States the early part of this week, bringing with it not only some colder temperatures, but quite a bit of snow in the Central Plains. But then for us here in the Carolinas, we're talking about getting some rainfall out of this one. When I say that cold front is pretty strong, look at how cold the temperatures are behind it. A lot of single digits, and in Montana, got a minus 13 reading there. So there is some cold air in store behind this front, and we need to see when it's going to get here, because it has already changed temperatures behind it through the early morning hours on Monday here, as much as 30 degrees of a temperature drop compared to the day before on Sunday. So let's take a look at where that front will be by midday today. We can see the very windy conditions in the south central plains, main frontal boundary stretching right in through here. For us in the Carolinas today, another decent day under the influence of some higher atmospheric pressure that's just off the coast here. So we've got some time before this front gets here, but we need to figure out when it does, because as you can see from the all hazards weather map, we're going to be bringing bitterly cold temperatures down here into the south central U.S., really getting into the over into the the southern Mississippi River Valley, where we've got frost and freeze advisories. But you notice all the blue color there indicating winter weather problems in the central U.S., meaning this thing is bringing in some colder air. So let's figure it out. Snowfall first, not expecting any of that, anything outside of the Appalachian Mountains, where you could see, as this front moves in, some wetter snowflakes moving in at some higher elevation. Much of the snow's in the northeast out of this system. So when does it get here? Well, let's just play this on out, and we're going to pause it right here. 4 p.m. today on Monday. You can see the main frontal boundary is finally moving by 4 to 7 p.m. toward the Appalachian Mountains, and it'll be getting there right about here. So this will be between 8 and midnight tonight. And as that front gets over the mountains, early for our Tuesday morning, the precipitation starts to spread in. Real broad shield of it here by 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. on Tuesday morning, stretching across South and North Carolina. Now, don't be surprised if you're over in the higher elevations in the Appalachian Mountains to get some wet snow mixing in with this, but we'll see that by 9 o'clock in the morning through about 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, that's when the main band of precipitation moves through, and then it gets out of here by 6, 7 o'clock in the evening. So rapidly advancing front here, bringing in some rainfall. Behind it, higher atmospheric pressure takes hold, but what we got to be watching next is what's actually starting here and then moving into the Gulf of Mexico, because it could set up a very wet end of the week and weekend for us over here in the Carolinas. So let's see what I'm talking about there. Main flow of the jet stream, still kinked up here across the Pacific, and then really get screaming in this area. But we all need to watch this feature right here. And let's take a look at what that one is going to do by switching over to our operational European model. Now, we've seen all of this already. That's through Tuesday evening, getting into Wednesday morning. So high pressure dominates after that. Cold temperatures in place. You'll see those temperatures in a few moments. And dry middle to end of our week. But look at what's coming right in through here. You see this system as it sneaks through the Gulf of Mexico by Friday morning will be taking shape here over the Florida Panhandle. At least that's the latest projection for this, and there's good model agreement as to this system forming. What is not in agreement is that the European model slows it down, pulls it through Georgia, into South Carolina and into coastal North Carolina by the time we get into Saturday morning. And what that potentially has the ability to do is drop some very heavy rain along the eastern side of North Carolina as we progress through the early part of our weekend. Now beyond this, I don't want to show you much of the model runs beyond this because there's pretty large discrepancy after that point. But here's the big difference. The European model slows down and gives us a deeper wave over here, whereas the GFS pushes it on out and open as an open wave into the open Atlantic Ocean. And those subtle differences, well, look at what they do. By Sunday, 6 p.m., we have a deeper low sitting and spinning here, whereas the GFS has nothing. It has high pressure back in place, and that same low is out here, out to open ocean. So the slower movement of the European model, we'll take a look at it here. If we look at our next 7 days in terms of total accumulated precipitation, much broader shield here of at least an inch of rain plus in this quarter, whereas the GFS isn't having anything to say of it outside of the rain that's coming through just here in the next 48 hours or so. So let's zoom in and take a look at the operational European and what it's calling for, taking it all the way to next Monday morning. So again, we can see with the front that's passing through tomorrow, plus the event that's coming through next Saturday, we may be able to add up here kind of a band stretching from about 3/4 of an inch here over toward as much as 2 inches as you get over toward the coast here. So anticipate that system at the end of the week. Watch it carefully and see how it migrates up the East Coast because it has the potential for being a big time wet weather maker for our next weekend. So be on the lookout for it. I just want to let you know it is still in the realm of possibility that system goes through the kind of coastal Florida and then just stays out to open ocean and we don't get much out of it at all. So I need you to watch all week long to see what we're anticipating here in terms of precipitation. All right. What about week 2? This is where our models really begin to diverge, and it starts in the Pacific. You can see the wetter conditions that the GFS ensemble is putting here that ride like this, and as a consequence, wetter conditions in through this area as well for week 2. What about the European? Well, it's got drier pattern in through here and drier coming into the Pacific Northwest. And the question is, why are there model discrepancies? We've got to talk about that. And I think that the answer for part of this lies in the Pacific, and the other answer lies in the temperature differences in Siberia. So here's what's going on in the Pacific. The Pacific North American pattern is forecast to really build up here before returning back toward normal. I have that from the GFS, and I can also see it here from the European model. Very similar pattern being painted. What about the EPO, the East Pacific Oscillation? Comes out of its negative phase and kind of moderates a bit. And we're really seeing it doing that too. Out of the basement, back up here toward more normal or slightly above average. Now, what are these patterns? Well, when the PNA is positive and the EPO is negative like this, we tend to put a big ridge over the west coast of the United States. We see both patterns moderating, and we have to ask ourselves why. And like I said, I think it's coming in the way of the temperatures. So let me play this out. 9 days worth of low temperatures. You ready? Bring it back here. Monday morning low, pretty chilly. Now you see some 30s tucked away in parts of the Carolinas, but you ready? Tuesday morning lows, Wednesday morning lows. We're talking 20s through parts. I mean, this is Raleigh right here. 22 degrees for a low on Wednesday morning. How long does that stick around? Well, this is now Thursday morning. Not much of a difference. Friday morning, start to moderate, get back above freezing at least. Then we get into our weekend and we kind of hang on to that similar pattern. So we've got some colder air that is locked into place at least through the next 5 to 6 days, and it wants to hang around with below average temperatures all the way into next week as well. Let me show you what I'm talking about in these model differences, though. This is amazing. On the left, GFS ensemble. On the right, European. As I click play, things look pretty good through Wednesday, except this. You see, the GFS has the upper level low here, and the European has it here. Now watch as I go into Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. That's where the difference really shows itself. Let's get to Saturday morning right here. What happens to the GFS? Takes it off the coast. Things are dry in the Carolinas. Cold, but dry. What's the European do? Deepens it, leaves it right over the Florida panhandles, draws in the moisture. Carolinas are wet on Saturday morning through Saturday afternoon and Sunday evening, or Saturday evening, excuse me. So the trough gone in the GFS, trough hanging around in the European. And then after that, well, it all just kind of breaks loose from one another, because we see that as we get out to the 18th, 19th, and 20th, yeah, the models are kind of in agreement. There's a broader trough sitting here. You can see it. But the telltale sign that these models don't agree is in the Pacific. The EPS, that's the European model, big wave breaking event, see it here? Whereas the GFS, wide open waves. And the GFS is therefore more progressive. The GFS is therefore got a deeper western trough and a bigger southeastern ridge. And the GFS has much different timing on all these precipitation systems that could potentially be coming through as we stretch ourselves out here almost to the beginning or the end of November and right around the start of Thanksgiving here. We're out to the 24th, going beyond that, 24th, 25th, 26th, that's Thanksgiving week. And the models couldn't have deviated farther from one another. You can see here the GFS digging a deep trough in the Gulf of Alaska. Europeans having nothing to do with it. So what do these differences mean in terms of temperature patterns? Well, they're in lockstep over the next 5 days. See that right here. Temperature differences from over the next 5 days. Yep, cold air is coming. We already saw it. Day 6 through 10, similar pattern overall, but this is where the changes really begin to manifest themselves. Take a look at the day 11 through 15. Now, if you're sitting in the Carolinas, you're going, hey, this isn't bad. I see both of them showing up with above average temperatures. Yeah, but it's the upstream pattern that I want you to see the differences between. And I think a lot of these upstream pattern changes, so I'm talking about getting to the western U.S. and beyond, is all because of this. You see, the GFS model is trying to bring in much, much colder air into Siberia. You see, we saw the weakening of the polar vortex over the last week or so, and if it weakens, it then becomes stretched and elongated and allows cold air to go somewhere. And both models are saying the global cold spot is going to be Siberia, western parts of Russia, and then Western Europe. But the GFS is much more aggressive with that cold, and therefore you can see it sneaking around and showing up again here in the Pacific Northwest. So these are important differences because they're going to shape our December forecast outlook. And as I continue to put my ideas together for what December is going to look like, and then getting into, well, January, February, March, we need to understand how this current disruption in the polar vortex might change those things, okay? Because sometimes these disruptions can have lasting impacts for as much as 6 weeks. So with the upper level winds, I'm talking way upper level in the stratosphere, as those winds are calming down and slowing down, that disruption is going to change things up. And right now it's putting all the cold air into Siberia. That's the main story that I want you to see here. Okay, so we need to watch this one carefully because these model differences are quite substantial. Quickly finishing this up, talking about South America. Well, with the planting progress of their soybeans probably approaching 60% at this point, we can see that in the next 15 days, both models are picking up on a wetter pattern, especially in Mato Grosso do Sul. Where there's a little bit of difference is right in through this area. You can see that the ECMWF on the right is drier in that area than the GFS is. But overall, this is a favorable pattern, I'd say, for precipitation across some of the major producing areas for soybeans here in South America. To keep it in perspective, I got the last 30 days of total accumulated precipitation on the left, and on the right I have the differences from normal expressed as a percent. Okay, so we can see the drier conditions in some regions, but just to summarize this, for all of Brazil's soybean producing areas, the drier conditions in September and early October got them off of their normal rate of accumulation. They've recently picked back up with the normal rate, as you can see over here, the heavier amounts, which means the slopes of these two lines match, but the deficit overall is about 4 inches across much of Brazil's major growing areas. So they need a lot more rain to get that soybean crop off to a really good start here. Remember, this has never been a story about the first crop soybeans. It's been about the delay in planting of second crop corn and cotton. All right, we'll keep an eye on all of it, but we here at the Farm Credit System in the Carolinas want to thank you for your attention, and we will talk to you again soon. Thank you.